Welcome to the Holistic Career Change Podcast. Spoiler alert, we don't discuss conventional, linear, boring career change here. This is the place where we talk about finding an aligned career path that feels like an extension of who you are, where you get paid for being yourself. Forget personality quizzes, soul-crushing scrolling on job sites, and breaking your brain trying to find your why. Join me and many other career changers who've changed their career holistically by first defining who they are at their core and then using this blueprint to design a fulfilling career or business. We use the mind-body-soul approach, and we take into consideration the complexity and multidimensionality of all that you are and want to represent in the world. This is where purpose-led careers are born and built. I'm your host, Vilma Osaita. Let's go. Hi, friends and lovers. I'm so excited to be back with you recording again. I love those little moments that I have in the peace and quiet where I get to share my thoughts and hopefully support you with your career change journeys. How have you been? My hope is that you're feeling aligned and grounded and maybe even a little bit excited about leaping into this next chapter, into this next evolution of yourself, whatever that could look like for you. So today, what I want to do, I kind of just want to cut through the noise and go straight to the core of finding alignment in your career path, because what I hear almost every single day in my DMs, my inbox, and my sessions is, especially at the beginning of this journey, is that it all feels very confusing for people, that they just don't know how to move forward, or they're asking, what should I be doing? I wish someone could just tell me, or I don't have clarity. I need to understand and have clarity before I move, or I'm so paralyzed, or I feel completely stuck, versions of that. And I know that when you are in that headspace, because I've been there and I've seen a lot of people in that headspace, it really feels like it's so blurry and confusing, and you just feel like you're in the fog and you see nothing, understand nothing, and you question everything. It can feel extremely overwhelming, but what I do want you to know is that first and foremost, I hear you, I feel you, I honor your confusion, and I absolutely agree that when the path isn't clear, it is nearly impossible to take aligned action, because when you don't know where you're going, then anything and at the same time nothing fits, right? So you're just like guessing, and guessing does not feel stable, it does not feel certain, especially if we're talking about career changes like mid-life, right? If you were in your 40s, maybe even in your 30s. I'm not saying that 30s is midlife, by the way. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So even though, again, I really want to acknowledge just how confusing it may feel. And again, each episode, each season serves a purpose. So there's a reason why sometimes there are periods that feel extremely muddy. They are very powerful healers if we accept the medicine. But what I do want to share with you today is that finding an aligned direction is not that complicated. It actually is not, and is quite simple if you know what to look at and if you know essentially which GPS coordinates to input before you go. Okay. And I really want to add a big caveat here. What we are identifying isn't necessarily sometimes a super specific job title or hyper niche industry branch with the exact salary figure attached. But what we can do, though, is get surprisingly precise with a very aligned career direction or several career directions for you, because there's never just one, right? And from there, once we identify that aligned direction, we essentially just roll up our sleeves. And then it's all about experimenting, gathering data, and making these micro adjustments to reach whatever destination, whatever aligned destination that you know that you need to go towards to. And your unique version of an aligned business or career is going to look different, right? It's going to look different than to your peer. And that is kind of what I specialize in, is really carving out these very beautifully, beautifully unique, authentic, aligned careers, and especially businesses, because like business allows us to play with different aspects of you and bring all of them on board. So I really wanted to record this episode because if you're feeling confused right now, I think this is going to serve you beautifully, and it's going to just lay out the map of the landscape of finding an aligned career. So I'm giving you my playbook. Maybe you want to take your notebook, maybe you want to take some notes, because I'm going to literally walk you through exercises, and also we're going to talk a little bit about some of the ancient sciences, I call them sciences, esoteric knowledge that I look at when I'm helping someone to find their aligned career. And again, these are kind of like the main ones. It's a little more nuanced and I look at more things, but I'm just going to give you some of the basic points to look at, analyze. And I feel like if you just do all of these, you could leave. Like, but not just actually listen, but if you do a little bit of work on it and you analyze, you can leave this episode having so much clarity about what alignment looks like for you specifically. Okay. So, by the way, what I'm about to share, it really comes from nearly a decade of working with clients, studying very different modalities. And when I say different modalities, I mean vastly different approaches, from ancient mystical knowledge to super practical strategic tools. I don't know how much I emphasize, I'm actually a certified strategic intervention coach. I studied under Tony Robbins, and I started with a very masculine modality, and I learned a lot of frameworks for creating immediate, measurable change. But at the same time, I also create magical rituals, and I work with elemental energy, and I dive deep into ancestral wisdom. So I feel like this fusion of practical and mystical is my superpower. That's why I approach career change like that, because that's what alignment is for me. And it's where I've seen the most profound transformations happen for my clients, in the intersection between these two worlds, if you will, like the feminine and the masculine, or the day and night, the light and the dark. I feel like in that intersection is where change happens. But again, this is not to say that this is the only or the best approach, because this approach will work for certain people a lot of the times who have a similar viewpoint, values, and understanding of the world as I do. If you're similar to me, this is where I feel like that transformation can happen for you. And what I'm teaching today, what I'm sharing with you today, is how to fish. I'm not giving you the fish. I'm teaching you how to fish, which means that, like I said, it will require you to roll up your sleeves and do some introspection, some research, and trial and error through this. But I promise you, it's so worth it. Okay. So before I dive into the nitty-gritty details, let me give you like a 30,000 foot view of this process, like bird's eye view. So first, what we're going to do, we're going to get intimate with your lived experiences. So we first start with what you know. We first start with your conscious mind. So what we'll do, we'll unpack some of the activities that light you up, the interests that keep you awake at night, the passions that you just can't shut up about, and the environments where you feel like you're just most badass self, where you just feel like yourself. Okay. So first, your lived experience or the conscious mind. Then we're going to go and we're going to call on some of the ancient wisdom, namely what I look at usually is astrology. And I mean the actual birth chart, natal astrology, not your daily horoscope. Human design, numerology, and some other typology systems that I found, and again, this is my experience, trial and error, these particular systems, they really have been helping to map out the human potential, if you will, since before, a great-great-grandparents were even a twinkle in someone's eye. They've been around. And when we put all of these lenses together, that's when we create this gorgeous kaleidoscope view of your soul's work, of the body of work for you in the world. Okay. And not just what you could tolerate and, for a paycheck, but what would you literally design to bring into this planet. So if that feels right and if that feels good, let's get started. So like I said, let's start with just reviewing your past experiences. So this exercise, sometimes it's referred to, I refer to the employment inventory. I think I shared this on the podcast as well. But again, like I see many times, the main mistake that I've seen people make, and the reason why a lot of you, if you're at the beginning stages, still feel confused, is because you take one exercise, one tool, one advice, and quick pause. If you've been listening to this podcast and you too, just like many others, have been moving through your days, holding it all together on the outside, but quietly unraveling inside, and you too deep down already know that you just can't do this job anymore, you can't stay in this career, but you have no idea how to pivot, this is where we change that. Because the Holistic Career Change Group program is now open for enrollment. And it's not just another career coaching program. It's your step-by-step portal out of confusion and burnout into a soul-aligned clarity and purpose-led direction. Inside the program, we will map out your career DNA, which will guide us to find a career that you were uniquely designed for. We will also regulate your nervous system through the somatic support. You will get intimate with your money and build a transition strategy. And finally, you'll create real, tangible career path or a business plan that actually fits who you are and who you are becoming. The Holistic Career Change Group program is your full body, full spectrum career change A-team that will guide you from what am I actually doing with my career to this is what I'm meant for. It feels like homecoming and this is where I get paid to be myself. We start May 1st. Enrollment is now open. All you need to do is click on the link in the show notes to join us. Now back to the episode. Just follow that, where that one exercise a lot of the times only points to one aspect of you, even if it's an important aspect. But if we ignore all these other authentic, truthful parts within you, especially the ones that might have been suppressed, what will happen is that, yeah, you can land at a career that maybe feels good for you, but a lot of the times it won't be long lasting just because those other parts within you will be screaming at you and saying something feels off. Something feels off. I don't have so much energy. I'm not always that excited, but it's not bad, but it's better than before. And yes, it's probably going to be a step up, but my goal with my work is to lead you to the ultimate alignment. That's why we're having all of these different variables that we'll look at. And also, like I said, I really want to remove confusion for people because it does feel like, oh my gosh, it's so hard. There are so many steps. It really is not that difficult once you're in it and if you follow this step-by-step process. So we started with your past experiences. So I want you to review everything you've ever done. And I mean everything when it comes to the jobs that you had. Okay. So not just stuff that looks good on LinkedIn, but I want you to list all of your past jobs, side hustles, even hobbies, like things that you've been obsessed with when no one's watching. Okay. So for your past jobs, and you want to start even with the very, very first ones. If you were a nanny or whatever that was, you want to list all of them. So you want to list all of those employments and jobs that you had. And then next to it, you want to look through each job and try to remember and then list all of the activities you actually enjoyed. And again, not what impressed your parents, not what looked good on your resume, but things that you actually loved, aspects, little aspects, even if they're not necessarily directly related to your responsibilities, but just things that you enjoyed. And during this exercise, by the way, I really want you to tell your logical, judgmental brain, which sometimes can be such an asshole, like to take a seat, okay? Because we're not assessing here. We're not trying to be logical here. We're not trying to understand how some of these activities could lead you to a aligned career, because that's sometimes what we'll do. We'll be like, well, I really enjoyed like flexible schedule and taking breaks, but like that's not a career, right? Don't worry about it yet. This is just the beginning stage. So you just list everything that you enjoy and just raw honesty. And what you want to do, you want to be very, very specific about what lit you up in each of these positions. Okay. So an example I'll give you, like I used to be a bartender when I was studying as a student, just to add, to get some pocket money. And what I loved wasn't necessarily making drinks, but what I loved was organizing the bar into an efficient system, and kind of like just bringing in order into chaos. Because, bars can be dirty, it's a low paying job. No one gives an F. If there are no clients, people just want to chill or be on their phone or chat or sneak in a shot. What I love doing when there were no clients was organizing, because I love organization and I like efficiency, right? And what I also loved, I loved having these like really cool philosophical conversations with slightly tipsy clients, who would actually open up, in ways that they normally wouldn't. And that good old chestnut where like every bartender, every hairdresser is actually a therapist. So I found that to be true. But again, so you see, if you could look at that position and I could say, well, no, I really hated, being around drunk people all the time, and I would end up like smelling like alcohol. And back in the day, believe it or not, when I just started, you were still allowed to smoke inside. Okay, that's how old I am. So I would just smell like cigarettes, right? Like, so you could say, oh no, I hated that. But what I want you to do is really think outside the box and allow yourself to go back to each experience and be, but what elements did I enjoy? And again, be very specific. And again, try not to just write, oh, I liked customer service, because that's a little bit useless. You can instead, what you want to write is, I lived for the moments when I could turn an angry customer's day around, with like empathy and problem solving. Right? Do you see the difference? Like then we're getting like a little more clear on what specific aspects felt meaningful to you and energizing to you. Okay. So this is your past employment experiences. You want to list those, and then you want to list what specifically you enjoyed. Then when it comes to your interests and hobbies and your passions, again, I see that a lot. I talk about it on the podcast as well. I vent all the time when we're like, follow your passion. I'm like, you can't just follow your passion. I'm just not here for it. But we do want to look into your interests and your hobbies and your passions. So what you want to do, you want to again list them. And usually what I advise my clients to do is like go back to the time when you were like little and see what you can remember, or ask your parents and just go through different stages of your life, different seasons of your life, and see what you enjoyed and list them. And then you want to review all of them and only keep the ones that like still make your heart race a little bit faster, where you're like, ooh, dinosaurs. That is exciting. Why? Like, I wish I could go back to it. And again, same advice as with the jobs. Please don't allow your brain to come in and be like, whoa, you're never going to make a career as a dinosaur specialist, right? Like, no, that's not what we're doing here yet, okay? You also want to include, when you're reviewing the list, like include the fields where you spend still to this day a shocking amount of time consuming the information or practicing it. For me, for example, it's always been astrology. I could really learn about astrology and aspects and planets for hours. I've always been, since I was little, in esoteric arts. I've always been into rocks, and then I got into crystals, and psychology. I've always liked psychology ever since I was little. I think I tell that story where I was like 11 or 12, and I bought a book for my mom, which is like how to deal with teens, or how to for parents, like a parenting book, how to deal with teens. And I said, I feel like you need to read this to prepare for what's coming. Such a bitch. Oh my goodness. But I felt like this is just what you do. For me, that felt so normal. I was like, yeah, we need to educate ourselves. And I remember I would read all of these law of attraction books and Napoleon Hill. Like, I was still like at school, I was still very young, but I was just so drawn to this world always, no matter what I was doing for a job. So what is this for you? The weirder, the more random, the better. Okay, because your soul doesn't care about conventional career paths. What we're doing now, we are creating this unique opportunity for you to get paid for being yourself. That's why this radical honesty is essential. Radical honesty is essential for this exercise. And again, this isn't just like making lists for fun, because I know that there is some advice out there where people are like, oh, just like look at what you like. No, this is where you're getting really specific and you take it seriously, because this is, I don't know, this is like sacred excavation work. You're literally mining your own history and, mining for gold. Because here's the thing, your answers are already inside of you. And I know how cheesy and annoying that sounds, but like these are the exercises that help you start seeing and bringing the unconscious into conscious and help you connect the dots. Okay. So once you complete this process, your jobs, and then your interests, hobbies, and passions, you'll already have a very beautiful, messy list of your favorite activities, plus the favorite fields of like research and interest. But this isn't just the foundation. This is kind of like the raw material for your soul's expression in the world. So we have that. Next, what we want to add to that. So notice how we're not looking at it in isolation. We're adding to it. Okay. So what we want to add to that now is environment. So you want to think about, because we are our environments. A lot of the times, again, this is something where I feel like more general and conventional career advice skip on completely, which is like, what environments do I thrive in, especially for those of us who are so sensitive to energy, or we're open in human design, say we don't have a lot of defined centers. We literally merge with our environment and with people around us. So if I'm not careful, guess what? I won't be happy. Even if, say, my job is aligned, but my environment is misaligned, I will end up hating and despising my job, and I'll be tired all the effing time, right? So places, spaces, environments, and locations are important. And what you want to think is, again, go back in time, do a little time traveling, and think about all of these spaces, environments, locations, not necessarily just job related, but in general, that made you feel like this goddess level version of yourself, where you felt the most powerful, where you felt at the same time the most at peace, where you were like, this is where I belong, this is my home. And I want you to really think of those specific experiences, right? To give you an example, and again, I can use myself probably as the best example just because, well, I know the most. So if you ask me what would be my ideal environment, I always think about movement in my day and lots of variety. Therefore, a traditional 9 to 5. And the office, it wasn't just boring to me. It was soul crushing, right? It was like watching my life force slowly leak out through my eyeballs throughout the day. And honestly, just like I would finish, say, at 4 or 5, and I'd come back home and I would literally spend the rest of the night in day just like vegging out because I was so drained, right? So movement, I'm also quite quick and I can be impatient. So I do thrive with shorter term projects. I love an in and out situation where I can see results quickly and move on to my next task, adventure, whatever it is that I'm doing. That's part of the environments. I absolutely love being abroad and working from moving vehicles. So train, boats, planes, you name it. And there's something about that liminal space that makes my creativity explode. So that's why I know that, again, that adds to the variety. Like I cannot just work from one place, right? I posted about it on Instagram some time ago. Like I sometimes go to a co-working space, but even in a co-working space, I never get like the fixed desk. I have a flex, like moving desk situation, because sometimes I'll be working from the armchair. I'll be using different rooms. I'll be working in the kitchen. Like I just need so much movement. And I know that about myself. What happens when I force myself to fit into the conventional way of working of like, hey, this is my desk and now I'm going to work 9 to 5. I am so incredibly uninspired, not productive, and I end up looking for soothing activities throughout the day versus actually getting the work done and being focused. So soothing could be, well, scrolling, not so much because I don't really scroll, but soothing could be, playing with my cat or eating or snacking or deciding that I need to watch this Love is Blind episode in the middle of the day because it feels very urgent right now. So when I'm misaligned with my environment or the way that I work, my productivity and results will suffer. Therefore, it's in my best interest. First, it was to understand what works the best for me. Because again, this is not something we are taught at school. because there's all conventional, right? Like when you're in school, you sit at your desk with someone else and there are a lot of people around you. When you get a job, you sit at your desk and sometimes there are a lot of people around you. And then really we never consider and ask ourselves, but where do I feel the most aligned, right? And another piece for me, I feel like if you ask me about ideal environments, is nature. I adore nature and I need to see trees and sky daily. If I don't, I get cranky. I get dysregulated very, very quickly. But I also know that I don't necessarily need to be working in nature, meaning like I don't need to become a forest ranger. But what I do need to have is access to nature on a daily basis. That means when I am traveling or when I'm choosing a location, I will make sure that there is at least a park nearby or something like that, because I will go on my walks and I will need that. Again, if I don't do that, my results will suffer, my mood will suffer. So summing it all up, and again, as I'm talking, I'm sure you're having some aha and light bulb moments when it comes to how you work and what you need, right? So for me, it's variety, movement, change, access to nature, and working from different physical locations, ideally abroad. So essentially, I need fully remote. Because the only thing that will allow me to introduce all this change and movement whenever my soul whispers or screams for it is fully remote jobs. So what does that look like for you? And again, same advice, get as specific as possible and be honest. Not what sounds impressive, not what you should want. Because I have clients who are like, I don't want to travel. I'm like, wow, you're a unicorn. I don't meet a lot of people who don't want to travel. And they're like, no, I just like want to be safe in my little library and do my thing. I'm like, I love that there are people like this, right? So like, and again, with, location independence or traveling, I feel like, again, it's romanticized just like owning a business these days, but I don't think everyone should travel. And I don't think that everyone should own a business, because it all goes back to your alignment and your authentic, true design. So again, what environments make your nervous system go, I'm home. This is right. I feel energized. I feel inspired. Now, extra tip, maybe for validation or extra information. I talked about it in the human design episode that I had. So you want to go, if you don't have it yet, generate a human design chart and check your environments, because the environments will give you another layer of understanding when it comes to the settings where you naturally will thrive. And obviously you want to check and experiment. Nothing is gospel. Like you want to check everything. Everything that I'm sharing with you today, you want to double check and experiment with. So for example, if your market's environment in human design, which is who I am, so that perfectly aligns with everything I just shared with you. So I need a little bit of buzz, I need movement, I need changing scenes, and I like opportunity for chance encounters, but I don't necessarily need like deep conversations and connections when I am in my work mode, unless I'm having obviously my coaching sessions. But when I'm just producing content or creating a course, I don't need connection. And some people do. Some people need connection in order to be able to work. So again, we're all so different. So that's what the environments are all about. And so if, say, you two are markets or you are valleys, if you try to force yourself into quote unquote cave, because there is another environment, a cave work. And if you do that right now, that could really have a severe effect on your mental health. And that may feel extremely isolating, and it will be very difficult for you to focus, and you'll just have depressive periods, because your design is the exact opposite of a cave, right? So knowing your environment type, knowing where you thrive is not just nice to have information. That's why I'm spending so much time in this podcast. So this is crucial. Because being in the wrong environment can drain your energy, can block your manifestation, and you can have, like I said, the most aligned job description in the world, but if you're a markets person stuck in a cave environment, you'll still feel like you're dying inside. And that's, again, that piece of alignment I feel like is so often overlooked. It just breaks my heart. That's why I'm so passionate about sharing this information with you. And again, here's where many people will go wrong. Like I said, they only look at one aspect, say interest and isolation, without seeing how everything connects. Because your aligned career is where all of these elements intersect. That intersection is your sweet spot and is the information that you need. Okay. So we've done kind of lived experiences. We've done what you've noticed about yourself. This is us working with conscious mind. And again, this is where a lot of other general career advice, conventional career advice will stop and be like, okay, now that we have this information, let's see what's available. So let's look at your resume. Let's look at this information and let's sort of come up with a different title, a different role, a different industry for you to pivot into. But I feel like this is just the very beginning. This is just the very beginning of what we've done. Then we go deeper. Okay. And to go deeper, I often go and start with astrology because over the years, I found that astrology can be massively, crazily useful and eerily precise sometimes when it comes to helping us get clarity on what an aligned career looks like for us. And again, just a reminder for those of you who perhaps are new to astrology. I don't know if I have a lot of people who are new to astrology. I feel like if you've been listening to this podcast, you probably are very much into astrology. So you know you're not just your sun, moon, rising, you actually know your houses and you know your planets. But for those of you who are completely new, I'm not talking about this watered down newspaper horoscope nonsense, okay? What I'm talking about is your full birth chart with all of this glorious complexity and layers, okay? So for example, within a Holistic Career Change group program, we have Kat. She's our in-house astrologer who is so intuitive. She's amazing. And she does these individual career and purpose readings for each member of the group. And plus we have a full module on career astrology. If you want to understand it better yourself and use that information moving forward in your life, we also teach it. Okay. That's how seriously I take astrology. But again, I don't look at it in isolation. It's all about where does all of this information connect. Okay. So let me give you a few pointers when it comes to astrology of, what you want to look at. And again, I think I do have career astrology episodes separately, but here, what I'm using it is how to apply that information. So again, a reminder, if you haven't listened to that episode, is you want to look at your sixth house because sixth house will govern your daily routines. So what does your schedule and day-to-day work needs to look like for you to feel fulfilled, right? And that also goes back to environments. It's around the sixth house, the same theme as well. And the sign on this house cusp and any planets that live in this house will show you how you best function in your daily environment and how to create daily schedules, routines, and plans that energize you versus drain you. For example, if you have a Gemini in the sixth house, here you'll need a lot of variety. You'll need to connect with people. You'll want to have short meetings. You'll probably also want to have movement and you'll want to be learning throughout the day because Gemini is it's ultimately so intellectually curious and it always wants to learn and know more, right? Whereas if you have Taurus here, it's probably more stability, more tangible outcomes, but also sexy, beautiful environments. I have clients with Taurus in the sixth house. They go to hotel lobbies to work. Like they go to beautiful, beautiful cafes. They just need to be surrounded by beauty. That's what inspires them. And no, it's not vain. Thank you very much. That's what they need. Then you want to look at so sixth house is your daily routines. 10th house and your midheaven is what represents your career reputation, public image, and your legacy. So this is probably the main career house. So this is the you that the world sees and your contribution to the world, right? And the sign of your midheaven or MC is particularly crucial because it's the energy that you will naturally exude in your career, whether you're aware of it or not. So if you're, say, Pisces MC, you might be known for compassion, your artistic abilities, your intuitive gifts. A lot of the times Pisces are psychic. They're so intuitive. Or on the other side of the spectrum, if you have Capricorn MC, so that's all about structure and authority and expertise, what you will want to focus on. And Capricorn is usually, it loves more of the militant scheduling. So if you allow your day to just happen to you, you probably will feel all over the place and you will feel fulfilled. But if you start embracing a little bit more of that structure, and you focus on creating legacy and creating, a lot of the times Capricorn is the business person, but like the business person is the patient one, the one that builds wealth, builds legacy, builds on, layer by layer and is quite consistent. This is where you'll thrive in your career. So we have the 6th house of daily habits and routines. We have the 10th house of your public image and reputation together with midhaven. We want to look at the 2nd house. The 2nd house will show how you earn and spend money. And it's your relationship in general with resources and what you value. It's the house of value. So the ruler of this house and any planets here will show how you naturally earn money and what's your style of earning and spending money. If you have Mars here, for instance, which I do, I have Mars here. So you will make a lot of money through action, pioneering things. Think about like Mars rules Aries, like pioneering entrepreneurial efforts. If you have Moon here, probably through nurturing, caretaking, or responding to other people's emotional needs. So more like Cancerian energy or Venusian energy. And then you obviously want to look at your North Node. Even North Node is much bigger than just your career. It's not always directly linked to your career, but it will give you like essentially like the flavor of this lifetime, flavor of what your soul came here to experience. Even though it's not a house, it does represent, like I said, your soul's evolution in this lifetime. And the sign and the house placement of your North Node can sometimes point to also your career fulfillment. For instance, if you have a North Node in your 5th house, you might find that your path is related to creative self-expression. Or when your North Node is in Virgo, you might evolve and find a lot of pleasure in service and refining systems and all of the beautiful things that our amazing Virgos do. So again, you look at the planets, you look at the ruler of the house, and you start linking it all together. You can take it one step further and look at the aspects that all of these planets make. So that will give you another layer. But really, if you I don't want to complicate this, especially if you are a little bit newer to astrology, is if you just study these houses, if you look at your North Node, and then you add it to what you already did in part 1 of looking through your lived experiences, your hobbies, your interests, and your past employments, you already are so rich with insight. You already are starting to see how the dots are connecting and patterns are starting to emerge. I cannot even tell you how many times when we're in that process of putting it all together, say within a group, and the clients will come in and they will be mind blown and be like, how did I not see how it's all connected? Because in their head, it all felt like isolated, unrelated aspects or interests about them. But then they add the layer of astrology. They're like, oh, it all makes sense. For example, I have Taurus in the 2nd house in Taurus. And Taurus, amongst all the other things, rules also over finance and even banking. And can I remind you what was my first career? I studied international finance and banking. So you would say, well, even those careers that you currently have that you feel misaligned, we can always see it in your chart, which is so wild. We can always see it in your chart of like why you decided to choose it, especially in the first 30 years of your life when you don't have that much of self-awareness yet. I can see why my soul chose finance, why for some reason that felt like a good decision at that point in time. However, when you zoom out and you start looking at other aspects, right? The fact that, say, for me, my midhaven is in Sagittarius. I have my chart is very Pisces heavy. It's a lot of intuition and healing and spiritual arts. I can see why I couldn't last in that career long term. But again, with that placement, I see now why it made sense to me at that time. So like none of those decisions that you've made are probably accidental or random. So again, when you look, going back to astrology, when you connect these houses and looking at what signs and planets are there, where the rulers are positioned, you already have a very rich story of what your aligned career could look like, at least the general direction, okay? Let me give you some examples because I feel like that would help you. So for example, if you have Sagittarius in your 10th house, your public reputation will probably be around you being wise, adventurous, truth-seeking, philosophically minded. It also, Sag rules over travel. So you could be working with people from abroad or living abroad as you work, or work moving you abroad, but essentially is the teacher, the leader, the spiritual leader. And your career will need a lot of freedom and an ability, a chance to expand your horizons, yours and others, right? If Jupiter, which is Sagittarius ruler, is in, say, then your third house of communication, your career path might involve teaching, writing, speaking, communicating about these expansive topics. So then you start thinking travel writer, philosophy professor, international education consultant, a coach, right? Do you see how it beautifully starts to connect? And we can start getting more and more specific. Or, for example, if you have Venus in your second house, so you will naturally probably be drawn to earning money through beauty, harmony, relationships, or create endeavors that bring pleasure to others. I can think of a couple of examples. Right? So this is where naturally you'll be drawn to. And again, a lot of the times when we unpack the chart, people then have so many aha moments because they're like, oh, I've always had this wildest idea, but I thought again that it would never be part of my career. But when we're building, especially portfolio careers, we can lean into all of these different aspects that feel unrelated. So again, if you have Venus in your second house, you also might be drawn to fields like design, luxury sales, relationship coaching, arts. And your financial flow will improve when you create beautiful experiences for others. So with your second house placements, the more you lean into the energy of that, the more money can flow to you, the more financial abundance can flow to you. Or, for example, if you have Scorpio in your sixth house and Pluto in 12th house, sexy, your daily work will probably thrive when it involves deep transformations, uncovering hidden truths. So you might excel in research, psychology, investigative work, helping others through crisis, deep trauma. Again, lots of psychic abilities here. And much of your important work happens like behind the scenes or in private spaces, especially if you have some big placements and planets in your 12th house. So the message that I feel like I keep on trying to reiterate here is that the power of your chart, just like with everything else in this episode, is not just in these individual placements, it's how they speak to each other. Because the aspects or the relationships between these planets add a very important layer of information. For example, a Sun-Jupiter trine might indicate natural success and expansion in career, or on the other hand, Saturn-Mercury square might point to challenges in maybe communication, and they can become with Saturn aspects, they can become strengths if you master them. And sometimes it shows that like there could be a little bit of delay in mastering them or delay in actually embracing your career. And I cannot stress enough how freeing it is when you stop fighting your chart and start flowing with it, because your birth chart is essentially your soul's blueprint, and it's not limiting you, it's showing you where your natural superpowers lie. So I feel like when we have this powerful tool, not to lean into it, especially if you feel extra confused, would be such a shame, if you ask me. And again, if you believe in astrology, right? I'm never here to impose my belief system on anyone else. I've just seen it work wonders and magic when we lean into that information. Also, as well, if you have, by the way, planets in retrograde, I'm talking about your natal chart, your birth chart. So, for example, some people can have Saturn in their 10th house and it's like Saturn retrograde at the time of the birth. That can also indicate delays in career development or delays in figuring things out when it comes to your career, because Saturn also rules over time. So that is a great reminder for you, especially if you are a career changer and you feel really devastated because you look around and you're like, oh my goodness, everyone has like figured the career out years ago. And here I am, I don't know, 30, 40, 50, and I feel like I'm still trying to be an adult. You want to look at planets in retrograde, and you will see when you generate your charts, if you're completely new, there will be a little R next to the planet. So you'll see which planets were in retrograde, because that can also affect how they move. That adds a little bit of extra information on the timeline sometimes. So if you have Saturn in retrograde, especially if it's in your 10th house or 9th house or 11th house, please don't be sad. That's exactly what your soul intended, is to take its precious time. Now, astrology, we touched on that. Now we also can look into your human design. We talked about environments, but there's so much more. And this system can help us to add a little bit more information when it comes to your career clarity. And if you are not familiar with human design, is your energetic DNA. It shows how you're designed to interact with the world in a way that feels effortless rather than exhausting, right? A little bit of an unpopular, I feel like, take, a little bit of unconventional take, but I stand by it because I've seen it to be true over and over again, is obviously you want to look at your type and authority. And again, I have a human design one-on-one episode as well if you want to go back and learn more about the basics if you're completely new. But apart from looking at the gates and the centers and all of that basic information, what I found is you want to check which energy centers are defined. So in your chart, it'll be colored in, because I found it to be game changing. Hear me out. Because if you say have a defined throat center, that means that wherever is defined, you have consistent energy flowing it and you have a defined way of operating through that center. So you have consistent, reliable access to expression and manifestation energy if you have a defined front center. So career paths that involve heavy speaking, writing, creating will probably be natural fits for you than something behind the scene, right? And I sometimes find that when people come in, especially with human design, they've been living almost the opposite life of their design, because if you have undefined centers, or if you have just a few defined centers, there is so much conditioning that we can succumb to because we then become very, very sensitive. So yeah, defined throat center, again, this probably you want to lean more into communication. If you have undefined throat center, so that means that you're highly adaptable in how you communicate and express yourself. And again, you take on energy of those around you. So you probably would excel in roles that require this mediation, versatile communication styles, diplomacy, adapting to different audiences and even cultures. That's an undefined front center. Another example, say if you have a defined heart or ego center, you probably have very reliable willpower. We call it the will or the heart center, and consistent sense of worth. So people with defined will center, they'll be like, no, F you. That does not feel right. I'm not doing that. I know what I'm doing. So you will naturally be the one who takes responsibility, and you can excel in leadership roles where your just sheer determination and belief can drive the project forward. Now, not to say that you're delusional and arrogant and narcissistic, which just says that you have that defined way of generating self-worth and self-belief, where a lot of people, even without you trying, will look up to you. So for someone like you who have defined will center, if you've been avoiding roles of responsibility and leadership all of your life, you've been defying and essentially fighting against your design. So that's just one example, right? Another thing that you can look at when you look at your chart is obviously the profiles, because I feel like the profiles can also give us quite a lot of clues when it comes to your career alignment. For example, if you're 2-4, a hermit opportunist, so these are usually natural networkers, and they also need a lot of alone time. So if you have 4 in your chart in general, working through groups, focusing on community work will come very easy and naturally for you, but then making sure that you spend time retreating and you spend time to just be in your own energy and recharge. But if someone comes in to me with like 2-4 profile and say maybe they are a manifestor or manager or a generator, I would say group coaching, membership programs, community leadership, but with a lot of distinct boundaries. And again, notice how this information does not even give us advise us on what would be the most aligned direction, but it even goes down to what would be the most aligned business offering for you if you're creating a business. For those of you who are interested, by the way, no, okay, I'm not going to go there. And I'm not going to edit that out. Here's how I flow. You're experiencing me flow in the moment. Or for instance, another interesting one, if you have 6-line profiles, right? And 6-line, if you have 6 in your profile, it's a role model. A lot of the times I've noticed that they're meant more for high level work with less personal touch. A lot of the times they still are interested in leadership, but more think of the guru of the guide roles. Think of someone sitting on top of the mountain and observing the patterns and then informing others. right? And for the first 30 years, they're usually just experiencing life. And the second 30 years are for retreat and reflection, and also starting to step into their master energy, because that's a master, a sensei energy. And the final phase is after that is for true like role model emergence, because that's a role model. So these careers often will evolve dramatically over time. So again, if you have a 6, you want to accept the sacred timeline that you are in. Again, your soul intended to take the time to collect the wisdom, life experiences, give you enough space and time to observe, because you're that guru, that mountain, that monk sitting on top of the mountain observing. So for someone who has a 6 line, I would really double check whether working with people, say if they're really interested, it's a light worker, they're interested in working with people, I usually advise against, say, having one-on-one containers. A lot of the times the line 6 is there to teach and share, and then they move on. All right, so even down to that point. An example that I have for you, because I feel like, again, examples really work. Like I'm thinking of my client, Melissa. So she was a 1-3. So you can think of kind of like a investigator, foundation builder, but also someone who's here to experiment and trial and error through life. A very interesting energy. She had defined root center, but undefined sacral. And she was so burning out in her corporate marketing role because she was trying to sustain consistent output like her sacral defined colleagues, right? And so she'd push through the fatigue with caffeine and willpower and then crash so hard on the weekends, and she just started burning out like there was no tomorrow. So when we shifted her to consulting work where she could use her incredible foundation building skills, the investigator line 1, in these intense project sprints, then followed by longer rest periods, her energy, her income, her fulfillment literally skyrocketed. And her undefined sacral actually became her superpower because she could deeply attune to what clients needed, and she could adapt her energy to match the projects, the pace, rather than forcing the same output every day, because this is just not how she was designed to work. And this is exactly what I mean by alignment. It isn't about finding some perfect job title. It's about honoring your energetic design so work feels like flowing downstream instead of constantly pushing against the current, which is exactly how a lot of us used to feel or still feel at our day jobs. Okay, I feel like this is turning into a really long episode. What else is new? So we covered a little bit of astrology, super high level, but like just to give you a direction. So we covered astrology. We looked a little bit in human design. Another aspect that I look into is numerology, and I love it. I love it for general direction. And obviously so much more than just your lucky numbers or angel numbers. You want to calculate your life path number. And I feel like it's the single most important number in your numerological profile, if you ask me. So once you calculate that, and it's very simple, and you can literally Google and you'll know exactly how to do that. Your numbers, when you look at the numbers, so there's 1 to 9 profiles, and then there's 11, 22, and 33, which is kind of like the master numbers. So again, super high level, because there's no time to go into too much detail, but you have some masculine life paths, masculine energy life paths. That doesn't mean that you're a man. It just means that the way that you want to take on life and lead in life is more young energy, more driven energy, more sun energy. So say life paths more like 1, 4, or 7, feminine, more feminine energy, perhaps is like life path 2. More alchemical energies like 6 and 9, because they essentially are here to alchemize, transform, and they live between feminine and masculine. So they dance with both of these energies, right? But each number will usually have very distinct career implications. So if, say, again, your life path number 1, so think about leadership, entrepreneurship, again, that masculine driven Aries, Mars energy, pioneering innovation, because you're here to carve out your own path and then stand out from the crowd. So if you've been hiding, that's not what your soul wants you to do. The more you lean into that leadership, the more you'll feel at home. And traditional employment for life path number 1 feels extremely restrictive. They want to just burn it all down. They're here to like change the systems. So you will always thrive wherever you can be first, best, unique in some sort of way. So again, like I said, think entrepreneurs, trailblazers, inventors, CEOs, independent professionals who need autonomy, because the Life Path 1 energy is about individuality, self-determination. You are not designed to blend in. And I'll say something controversial. If you're Life Path 1, a lot of the times, obviously we would look at your chart and all the other aspects. These are not people who even like to collaborate. And sometimes they shame themselves, or they're shamed by others for not wanting to do that. But they're not here to collab. They're here to create and initiate and lead. Okay. Or an example, Life path number 5, the sexy one. So it's kind of like freedom-seeking adventurer. Again, they will need a lot of variety, movement, change. And the same as life path 1, traditional 9-to-5 jobs will feel like prison, because they will be thriving on autonomy and experiences, and their ability is superpower. So these are the people who more than anyone else will need that location independence, movement. A lot of the times these people, even I've seen them tie their career to short projects, like I said before, traveling. A lot of them are in hospitality and travel even. So that definitely, that tells you something. Or if you have, say, life path number 9, this is your humanitarian, visionary. So your work, it's about contribution. You can't just do a regular job where you sell tomatoes, which is nothing wrong with that. But you're just someone who needs to impact. You're here to impact. You've collected a lot of life experience from previous lifetimes. So you're here to contribute to the greater good and cause. And life path 9s, a lot of the times they have great global perspective and they care about the legacy. And they excel in roles with broad impact, teaching, healing, artistic expression, is all that uplifts, heals, and serves others. So again, think about international work, nonprofits, counseling, healing, coaching, all of these fields that serve the evolution of humanity, especially right now. So again, you may look at all of this information and be like, well, yeah, it's just a coincidence. None of it is a coincidence. And again, the power lies in you starting to add like a little puzzle piece next to the puzzle piece. And you're starting to see, a lot of my clients see in the group, they tell me, when I look at myself through all of these different angles, it's completely wild to see how all of them will confirm one career direction for me. Astrology will confirm for them. Life path will confirm for them. Additional sort of tools or typology systems that you can look into if you want to go a little bit deeper. The 2 of my favorite ones, because there are a lot of them, but again, this is just me sharing with you what I found is the most precise when it comes to career alignment, is obviously Enneagram, because it will tell you a little bit more information. It's a bit of a different profile, but it will tell you about your motivations and fears that will shape your career satisfaction, right? So for instance, if you are type 8, the challenger, so you, again, natural leadership, decisiveness, comfort with power positions, executive roles, C-suite, advocacy, protection services, like anything that allows you to make impact and create a lot of change and a lot of autonomy and respect. The challenger will need that. So a lot of the times you will have someone life path 1 and Enneagram 8, and you're like, oh my God, this is literally such a similar profile. I'm like, yes, because it's been trying to send you a message. Or you go type 9 in Enneagram, which is a peacemaker. So it's really all about seeing all of the perspectives. This is like the Libra energy. This is like seeing both worlds, creating harmony, mediation, diplomacy, human resources, counseling, or creating fields that involve like beauty and peace, right? And again, this is, if you're Enneagram 9, you want to look for environments that A, appreciate you, but B, they really value your calming presence, your neutrality, and don't take advantage of your very accommodating nature. Okay. So what also I really love about Enneagram is understanding how your stress and security points work and how you behave when things go well versus when they don't, because it helps you design a career that supports your growth rather than triggering those core fears that you have. In addition, obviously, all of you I know are familiar with Myers-Briggs type indicator, MBTI. Again, if you look at more conventional career coaching or career counseling, they will usually include MBTI, and that will probably be the only typology system. For me, it's just a tiny, tiny smidget. I will look into that because that will give us a little bit more clarity when it comes to, again, specific career paths. So it will give you insights. Also, what's really good about it is how you process information and make decisions, which will directly, obviously, impact your career satisfaction. So you can look into that. I can go on because there are other systems and points that I could share with you that I use. But again, what I want to emphasize with this episode here's where most people get confused, because they look at just one of these tools, say MBTI, and then they project, assume, freak out, and end up doing nothing. And the reason why I find alignment relatively easy in my world, I see that as helping you find aligned career as easy because there's a structure and there's a system in the way that you can approach it, is because I look at all of these aspects together, and they're like different lenses in a kaleidoscope, and each adds to the beauty of who you are. And where they intersect, that's where your most authentic self-expression, career alignment, abundance, satisfaction, purpose lies usually. And from this intersection, we can get so surprisingly specific. Like I said, we can tell you what type of work suits you, what form or structure, entrepreneurship, team, large organization, small organization work for you. We can tell whether you are a specialist or you need to really embrace your multi-potentialite nature with a portfolio career. We know which industries align with your energy. We know what environments you'll need to thrive in. We even know what type of business offering will match your career blueprint and archetype. Okay. That's how much we can know. Like, we get super specific. For example, my client, Ellen, again, I really want to weave in more and more of those examples to see how practically that actually looks like. So when she came to work with me, she was very, very confused about her path forward because she had been very successful in corporate. She was a corporate lawyer, but she just, again, felt obviously long hours. We all know that. And at the beginning of her career, she was excited because she thought that she was here to impact and create change and advocate for people. But then choosing corporate law, it really didn't give her a lot of opportunity to do that. So she felt increasingly drained and disconnected. So when we mapped this kaleidoscope, or call it career blueprint, for her, here's what we found is that her past experience showed that she did love analyzing data, and she actually loved teaching others and supporting others. Right? That's why initially she chose law for very romantic reasons. We found that her ideal environment was kitchen, which is nurturing and is a more connecting environment. Astrologically, she had, I believe it was Aquarius midheaven. Yeah, I think she had MC in Aquarius. Her human design was 4-6, so networker, role model. Her numerology was life path 9, the humanitarian. And her MBTI was ENFJ, so the teacher, the catalyst, the therapist, the social worker. So as you can see, we understand the initial seedling to go into law, but the type of law she chose and the daily reality of what she was actually responsible for is basically working with enterprises and corporations and corporate law and helping them get out of trouble and become richer. That was so misaligned with her true, authentic career blueprint. So when we did this analysis at the intersection of all of these elements, we found that her aligned path was educational consultant, and she was helping companies create more humanitarian, forward-thinking training programs. That's her Aquarius. Aquarius needs community. It needs humanitarian efforts. It wants to, again, push the evolution of this planet forward. And now she works remotely. She designs her own schedule, and she actually earns, I suppose she said double or maybe even triple of her previous salary while being fulfilled. And I know that for some of you, it feels so incomprehensible how like you move into alignment, you enjoy what you do, and you get paid even more. But that's the reality of things, because that's when you tap in the energetic flow and the energetic blueprint of this universe. And the beauty wasn't just, by the way, for her in finding this direction, it was in the confidence that she also gained from seeing the same patterns emerge across, like I said, different systems that were like telling her the same thing and pointing to the same direction. And this wasn't just a random career idea. It was really encoded in her design from multiple angles. And now that she understands her design, by the way, she can also add new offers, new services, like knowing exactly what's aligned or misaligned. So she has this like internal compass that she can use forever for the rest of her life to make decisions when it comes to career alignment. So as you can tell, I'm very passionate about this because I've just seen it work over and over and over again and provide people with so much clarity about alignment. And again, by the way, if you can hear my cat, I'm so sorry. I know she's been meowing throughout the recording. If you guys have a pet, you know that. Like, I obviously have my office and I have my door closed. If she's inside my office, she's by the door meowing because she wants to go out. And when I let her out and I need to pause the recording, she will be by the door, which she's doing now because I just let her out and she's meowing from behind the door because she wants to go in. Why do they do that? Anyway, so I walked you through the main ones, but obviously there's so many more touch points that we can look into, and I do look into, and it's important when we're designing an aligned career, but I really wanted to give you essentially the meat and potatoes of finding those aligned directions. Is it simple? I find it simple, right? Yes, it's not as simple as taking an online quiz and expecting that it will tell you exactly what you need to do and what's the transition plan for you. That's unrealistic, but it definitely is simpler than many of you think that it is. And then the endless confusion that most people will subject themselves to without knowing this basic understanding of what alignment looks like and how to find it. And again, I just feel like many of those who are confused think that landing on an aligned career, or they look at like success stories of other entrepreneurs or people who love their job and they think they're so lucky. They're so lucky. It's such a gamble. Some people never find it and they completely give their responsibility away, because this is not about gamble. It's about knowing how to make an informed decision for your future. And again, if you just follow this episode, you can get there. Just this episode alone can actually get there. But if it feels overwhelming, I want you to remember that you don't have to do it alone. And that's exactly why there are containers like the Holistic Career Change Group Program. That's why I created this container, to walk you step by step through the entire process. And this is just a small part of what we do inside. So if you know that it's time to move, but you just don't know where to start, this episode feels overwhelming for you. If you are continuously watching videos on how to find your purpose at midnight, I know I used to do that. If you're journaling and Googling and overthinking, if you're fearing about your financial future, should you move, you're definitely invited to join this group, because we cover all of that. It's literally for women like you. And I added to the group every little piece I know career changers need to find and make a successful transition, but also what I so wished I had years ago when I was transitioning and I had to figure it out on my own, which took me years, versus now the group is 5 months, right? So we condense the timeline because we know how to move through it. Having said that, I feel like it's important to add this caveat that the way that I work, and you can tell from this episode, and in general, if you've been listening to the podcast, I don't believe in quick fixes. I just don't. What I do believe is in realignment. What I do believe is we can build a path forward that will feel truer, more sustainable, that will feel like yours, that will feel like home. And I do believe that all of us have a specific purpose. We all have a specific way that we intended to move through life and the impact that we intended to make. And that information is available for us as long as we're open and willing to decode it for ourselves. And honestly, just magic happens and the universe rearranges when we start leaning into that design, into that career blueprint. So can you do this work on your own? I always said that 1000%. But if you're tired of doing this on your own, if you want support, if you want community, if you want someone to take your hand and guide you through the process, that's my superpower. Please check out the Holistic Career Change Group Program. If you're listening to this real time, we will be starting May 1st. So you have just a little bit over the week still to sign up. The group is already forming. So if your body is finding relief and release, and if you feel heard and understood when you're tuning into this podcast, when you listen to this particular episode, you're really invited to check it out. But even if you're not joining, my hope is that with this episode, you are starting to see that your aligned path isn't a mystery to be solved. It is sacred knowledge already encoded within you, and it's just waiting to be revealed if you use the right lens. Until next time, keep shining your light. Have a magical week. Thank you for spending time with me today. If you enjoy this content, please make sure you subscribe to this podcast and leave a quick review to help us share the message of aligned work with the world. And if you'd like to learn more about how to find and transition into your very own purpose-led career or business that feels like getting paid for being yourself, make sure you check out the episode notes below. Have a wonderful week.